On Monday, the 19th January 2026, at around 12 o'clock, that is midday, the Nairobi Securities Exchange witnessed a monumental moment. Monumental in the sense it had been 17 years since the last initial public offering. And for this particular instance, it was the Kenya Pipeline Company. I was there to witness that, and so was Honorable John Mbadi, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury. And this was a proud moment for you, and you'll tell us a bit more about that at the end in terms of what it would mean for you in success. However, let's start with what it is and what it is not. There's many people watching, some confident, some speculative as to what this is. And let's clear the air. What it is and what it is not. Some saying this is asset disposal, others saying it is a form of cash crunch for the government, so they're looking for some capital injection. Let's clear the air on that.
What it is not, Mark, thank you. What it is not is that it is not sale of KPC. It is not that we are disposing KPC. What we are doing as a government is we have realized that this is a mature public asset. We want to democratize ownership of this asset. We want it to be broad-based, if I may use that word liberally, to allow as many Kenyans as possible to have a piece of their jewel. Kenyans are invited to participate in owning KPC. It is not about disposing a prime asset, as some people have been saying. And by the way, the resources or the capital that we are going to raise out of this by divesting in KPC will go into National Infrastructure Fund, which fund is only going to implement or rather fund commercially viable public investment infrastructure. Yes. And therefore, we are like getting, we are releasing the shares to raise funds to get another asset. So replacing one asset with another asset. But again, we are still going to retain 35% of the share ownership of KPC.
So still very much an interested party.
We are still very much interested party, and majority of the shareholders are still going to be Kenyans and the East African region, as I mentioned. So this is a very, very well thought out transaction, so to speak.
And right now, and in the move, because this is not going to be the last in terms of privatization for those government assets that have matured, but there's a purpose to it.
Yes.
Right? And it's not to, relegate or give responsibility away.
Not really. Actually, it is a conversion of asset. The part that we are releasing and getting resources, that fund is going to be put into a National Infrastructure Fund. National Infrastructure Fund is going to help this country develop public infrastructure projects, which are going to spur economic growth and which are commercially viable. So it is, if you are an accountant, you'd call it changing one asset with another asset. We are not releasing these shares to raise money to finance our budget in the normal course of business or funding budget.
All right. And even you did quip that you will try your hand and even buy into the Kenya Pipeline Company's shares, as you're speaking to the chair of the NSE.
That's correct.
As an investor, you are, and any other Kenyan out there who's looking in, wondering, should I not? There's a question of valuation, and of course some saying that the valuation is a bit steep. However, as you approach this, how do you look at it as an investor or even as CS?
You know, the value of assets or value of shares in the stock exchange is determined by a number of factors. But I will tell you, one of the most critical factors, especially regarding an IPO, is the profitability and the history of the company. And if you look at the history of Kenya Pipeline, it is very strong. It has been making profit and continues to make profit. And looking at the future of KPC is very, very solid and sound. And I will tell you, it has been making profits of up to 20% of the total revenue generated in a year. And that is a clear indication of efficiency, even with government heavy involvement or participation in the management of the company.
I won't ask how many shares you've bought, but you are an investor just like I am. And
I may not know, you know, Mark, I may not know how much shares I will finally have. What I may know is my proposal. I would put a proposal and ask that I want to own so much. But depending on how
Yes.
the total subscription,
Yeah.
certainly this is a democratic, open, transparent process
Yeah.
that you cannot manipulate. So the way I will be assessed is the same way you will be assessed, and that is the same way Mama Mboga will be assessed.
And they will be able to
express
access
interest.
it.
Yes.
Right. And you did say this is a form, the privatization is a form of the government getting out of business to allow the private sector to run business. Help us understand the delicacy, or at least how delicate it is, or at least how tasking it is for government to run business, at the same time regulate it.
Yeah. Clearly there is conflict of interest, Mark. Because if you are a regulator and you are participating, it's like Gor Mahia playing with FC, and the coach of Gor Mahia becomes the referee in the game. It doesn't make sense, because government's role is supposed to be a regulator. The government is supposed to issue policies, and you cannot do both and again run commercial enterprises, because then there would be that conflict of interest. And further, you may not now do your regulatory and policy direction responsibility, execute it very well.
Yes.
Secondly, running commercial enterprises is very technical, very professional, and requires efficiency in decision making. And especially in a competitive business environment, you require faster turnaround of the decisions. With government bureaucracy, that may not may not work well for commercially viable or commercial entities like KPC.
Right.
So that is why now there is need for the government to release most of the businesses where they have been involved to the private sector and retain their primary responsibility of giving out or issuing policies, and also on regulation.
Right. And historically, just to appreciate what that conflict of interest has cost Kenyans, tell us a bit about that.
And historically, you will find that many times government has run businesses, many of which have collapsed because of that government heavy involvement in these businesses. I would also mention to you that a lot of businesses have not been able to compete effectively. That is why KCB, for example, had to be privatized. The time Kenya Commercial Bank was owned almost entirely and exclusively by the government, it was struggling and making losses. Now it is one of the blue chip companies we have around and making profits, one of the biggest in the region. There are other areas where efficiency has played a significant role. You can see Kengen, even Kenyari. They have turned around and they are making profits. Safaricom was a small department in the government. But the moment Safaricom was privatized, it has become the biggest company, the most profitable in the region, East and Central Africa. And you can go on and on. And lately, you can see what is happening with the Kenya Pipeline. It has become one of the profitable companies, yet it was just struggling a while back. So there are so many examples one can give of historically how we've gone this route and succeeded. And I am very sure that if we go this route with KPC, we will be able to make it even more profitable, because KPC has a future.
Right. And what is the ecosystem that helps regulate the privatized or the private sector in terms of it adding to the economy and not exploiting it? Because some people almost directly translated to privatization equals exploitation.
Correct. In fact, Kenya is one of those economies and countries with robust legal and regulatory framework. If you look at our statutes, we have very sound, very solid statutes regulating and controlling unfair business practices, one of which is competition. We have competition authority, which deals with matters of fairness and pricing and costing. So that must be that body and entity is there to help deal with cases where businesses may be run in a manner that is not competitive. Secondly, especially in the energy sector, we also have other players like IPRA, which regulates and sets prices every month. It is actually not KPC which determines the pricing of our petroleum products, the fuel prices. It is a body, which is a government body, IPRA, every month determining that cost. KPC is a transporter of petroleum products and will still remain as a transporter. And we are likely to benefit more from privatization, because that efficiency will be built into the logistic cost of transporting petroleum products. There are other institutions. Judiciary is there. If anyone is aggrieved, you will still run to the judiciary and get justice. There is also the oversighting institutions like Parliament, and of course we have the line ministries, we have the National Treasury, which will still be around to make sure that there is fairness. We have in other areas communication authority. So we have so many regulatory bodies and legal framework to guard against unfair business practices. A
good point you bring up there, because yes, the government still retains 35% stake.
Right.
Someone looking at this saying you've ceded 65%, the majority stake in this. What rules or what remains as non-negotiable, even if the stakes have changed?
Yes.
Are you just going to be at the fence? Are you still going to be referee as government? What is non-negotiable?
What is non-negotiable is unfair and competitive practices.
Okay.
That is likely to be deployed in this space that the government cannot entertain. And also, the country, the whole world is looking at environment and making it green, and we are all concerned about environmental safety. So any action from any business that is going to compromise our environmental safety is also not acceptable.
In line with that same question, what reassurance do we have that the national purpose of all of this privatization of matured public assets, the national purpose remains, despite what changes there are in ownership?
First of all, we must comply with the laws and the regulations and the policy direction of the government. That will remain. We also can have confidence that the government has made a decision that the proceeds of this transaction is going to be put into National Infrastructure Fund, which again is going to help in spurring economic growth in the country.
And if someone would perhaps go beyond the boundaries that are set therein with the safeguards, how does the government, or how will the government step in to intervene?
And as I mentioned before, actually the government our country has a very clear, very sound and robust regulatory framework. And with the recourse, whatever, if you veer off or leave and do something that is not provided for within the regulatory framework, the laws are there to deal with that, and they are very clear, and we have the bodies to deal with it. And you will find that it is very costly not to comply as opposed to comply. And therefore they will definitely, anybody who is involved in doing business, by the way, even those companies which are 100% owned, foreign owned, have to comply with our regulations, our rules, and they comply. There is no exemption and there is no discrimination.
Right.
And that will also still apply even when we privatize some of these entities.
Someone who's been keen in on the market, or at least governance issues or priorities of the government, might look at this and say, hey, someone is in a rush here, because, as you mentioned, Safaricom just the other day, and particular ceding of shares, and then now KPC. However, this did start in 2009. That is the privatization attempt initially. So the conversation has started. But someone looking inside from out and perhaps hasn't been keen on this is asking, is there a particular rush? Is CS under some form of pressure?
You know, Mark, what has held this country back is failing to move and make decisions when we should. Many a times we have very fantastic ideas, great ideas. Big minds have come together. Remember, even in case of KPC and privatization in general, we have formed various commissions led by very intelligent people. They have compiled reports that have been hailed to be very progressive, but no one acts on them. Remember their Wondo team. Remember the abdicated team. The reports are gathering dust. In 2009, under the leadership of President Kibaki, that was just 2 years, or slightly less than 2 years into his second term. The cabinet then made a decision and a resolution through cabinet memo which was approved unanimously, that KPC was supposed to be privatized. No action has been taken up to 2026. How many years later? Close to 17 years later. There is no explanation, no justification why no action has been taken. Now, this government has decided to be bold and courageous and take steps now to actualizing some of these decisions. And by the way, it is not just this transaction, which heavy decision we have taken. We have taken other decisions to reform the entire space of government-owned enterprises, state-owned enterprises. Some of them we have merged, some of them actually we are doing away with, which don't make sense. And this has been said over the years. This government is not going to behave like other governments previously. We are going to do things differently because we know for the country to move forward, actions must be taken, decisions must be taken, and action must follow. And that is what we are doing. And it is not about cash crunch. Far from it. Actually, I have said, and I want to repeat it, that the proceeds of this transaction are not going to be used to plug the budget hole. The proceeds are not going to be used to finance our budget in the strict sense of it. We are going to put money as a seed, this fund, as a seed capital to start the National Infrastructure Fund, which is only going to finance only the commercially viable projects, public infrastructure projects. And therefore, the only way it is going to help us ease the burden in the budget is to take away the commercially viable public infrastructure project from the budget so that we redirect the resources that were going into these public infrastructure projects into other social services like health, education, support to the vulnerable of our society, and provision of drinking water to households.
Prioritizing public service and service to the Mwananchi.
Correct.
And you did say this under your watch as CS of Treasury. You were keen to make this KPC IPO not just talk, but action. And you have achieved this. For you, as a last word, what would it be as success? We're looking at the month, at least the IPO opening is open for at least a month. And then now we continue with the exchange within the market and the trading. What will it be? What will success spell for you as the CS for National Treasury?
Of course, the success for me would be seeing the number of Kenyans and other players oversubscribing for this IPO. But more particularly, I would want to see a wider base. I want to see a democratized ownership of KPC. I don't want a few players, some few Kenyans or some few individuals taking up almost the entire share ownership of KPC. Kenyans have been questioning whether we have some people, shadowy bodies, we want to sell or dispose KPC to. Far from it, we have said this, and I want to repeat, we are expanding the base. We are expanding and democratizing the ownership of KPC. That is why 5% will go to the staff, 15% will go to the oil marketers who are major players in this space, 20% will go to individual Kenyans, you and I, and another 20% will go to our institutional investors within this economy, like insurance industries, like the pension funds, NSSF, and the rest. And then there will be another 20% which will go to the rest of our neighbors in the region, the East African region. And only 20% will go to those I can strictly refer to as foreign investors. And therefore, this company is going to be in the hands of Kenyans. I want as many, and I'm appealing to as many as Kenyans, many Kenyans as possible, to get into this space. However little you have, make sure you subscribe. It is only 900 shillings because the minimum shareholding will be 100 shares, each at 9 shillings. That is 900 shillings. Mama Mboga, the fishmonger, can definitely own a piece of the KPC. That will be my joy.
And at least, as you say, democratization, this is on a lighter note. Mimi na CS tuko pamoja saizi. We are equals as shareholders, at least potential shareholders. Even you are an equal with the CS. Muko pamoja. In fact, labda you'll be more a shareholder than he is at KPC. So, tukutane kwa soko.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for your time and all the best.
Asante sana.
All right. Have a good day.